Hey guys, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. First and foremost, just to apologise for the sound of my voice. I was actually going to give this video a miss after a barrage of things coming my way this week. First and foremost being my cold, which has very kindly seen off the last of my voice. An operation I had on my face on Monday, which has, again, very kindly left me looking like a pirate for the foreseeable future. And next door, who've, again, very kindly just started drilling and hammering away as soon as I sat down to record this video. So I think all in all, the gear gods are probably trying to tell me to give this one a miss. But I shall soldier on regardless, as ever, to try and answer a few questions that I received specifically off the back of last week's video, which, if you didn't see it, the premise of which was 3 pedals that I feel I can't live without. The overdrive pedal in question being the Analog Man King of Tone. Now, if you're a bit of a kind of gear nerd like myself, I guess you'll be familiar with this pedal. And surprisingly, the use of it in the last video sparked a lot of questions in the comment section, in private messages, Facebook, Instagram, generally bombarded me with questions. Specifically about whether I waited, how long I waited, how much I paid, whether I had any of the options, whether I bought it on eBay, whatever, etc., etc. And generally, the bigger kind of picture, I guess, is the King of Tone worth the hype? Now, to start at the start, give you a little bit of background about how I came about the King of Tone. Much like everyone else, there is that drilling again. Much like everyone else, I'm just going to speak a little bit louder, bollocks to him. Much like everyone else, I waited on the waiting list, and looking back through emails this morning, found out that I waited just over a year. It was a year and 1 day, specifically. I signed up on the 16th of September 2014 and had my email through telling me I was ready to place my order on the 17th of September 2015, so literally just over a year. I understand the waiting list is actually up to a year and a half now, probably in no small part due to guys like That Pedal Show and me and other people singing its praises and using it, so apologies for that. So yeah, just over a year waiting list, and all in, actually it was $235 plus shipping and handling. And then obviously, because I'm in the UK, I got whacked with import tax on top of that, which I think all in probably took it around about 250 quid, which at the time was the most I'd ever spent on the pedal, and remains the most I've ever spent on a pedal that I've not played. No one I knew had one, so it wasn't as though I just popped down, mate's house and kind of plug into it and see what I made of it. And obviously they're not stocked in shops, so in that respect, it's a case of sight unseen, and it's just taking a punt on something which you've read about. And as we all know, Facebook and the gear page are the best place to try and form an opinion on gear. Totally unbiased and sensible opinions. As I said, just over a year waiting list for me. In regard to whether it is worth that, I guess suffice to say that it's been my main overdrive pedal pretty much ever since. Save for about a week after I bought it, where I didn't initially get on with it and couldn't quite get my head around what it was meant to do. It's been there for every gig, every tour, every recording session since, and I've no doubt I've done more hours playing on it than I did pounds spend on it. So in that respect, definitely worth it. Again, that's a question though that can only be answered by the specific person using it, and if for whatever reason you don't get on with it, then it's not worth the hype. It's a fairly easy one to get your head around, I guess. In regard to why I didn't initially like it, funnily enough, the reason I didn't like it was for the very reason that it was initially designed, and that is for the fact that it's not a tube screamer. I was fairly entrenched in my tube screamery ways until that point, and very used to playing a Strat with the massive mid-hump that you get in the EQ curve of a tube screamer, and obviously the bass being cut. This, whilst far from transparent, is more transparent than a tube screamer, and basically was designed, the actual starting point for this circuit was a blues breaker. But yeah, the reason which Analog Mike actually set about designing this in the first place was a friend of his. I'm going to kill these drillers in a minute. Basically, the reason he started it was a friend of his which wanted a tube screamer without the mid-hump, without the bass cut. And as I said, entrenched as I was in my tube screamer ways, I just couldn't really get my head around not playing without those. So it took a little bit of time to get used to the flatter EQ curve. And basically I just stuck it on my pedal boards. I started A-B'ing it at gigs and doing what tracks I felt happy with the King of Tone, and then slowly, over the space of about 3 weeks, I guess, it quickly replaced the tube screamer. And to be honest, I would probably struggle to play with a tube screamer now and the massive mid-hump that you get. So that's the kind of my story, I guess. I didn't have any of the optional extras, so it is as standard as they come. It's the version 4. Trying to think if there's any other questions asked. As I said, I waited. I didn't buy it on eBay. And I think out of respect for Mike Pierre, I wouldn't go and spend 500 quid on a cast off on eBay. Just, it's a small guy trying to run a small business. Support him if possible, which is where the question of the waiting list comes in. Obviously, there's boutique pedal companies out there which don't implement waiting lists. Arguably not as successful as Analog Man with such a kind of revered pedal as the King of Tone, but you can go in and buy them from shops, you can buy them off the shelf, and just order them directly from their website and have it in a fortnight. But that said, I entirely get why there is a waiting list. Having read a little bit about Mike on his website, the reason that it was implemented was basically to keep up with demand, which sounds like a daft thing to say and a fairly obvious thing to say, but all these are handmade in the US, either by Mike or a small team of colleagues, as I would understand it. I have no affiliation to Mike, by the way. This is just stuff I've gleaned from YouTube videos, that pedal show, the interview they did with him recently, or just reading bits and bobs on his website. It's him and a small team of guys building these by hand in the US. And basically the reason they implemented the waiting list was just to make sure that the company was sustainable and was viable in the long term. A lot of companies didn't survive the recession a couple of years ago, whereas Mike, having implemented the waiting list, basically maintained a steady flow of income, as I would understand it, throughout tougher times. So in that respect, it's entirely understandable why it's there. If you don't want to wait the list, there's eBay if you really want to, or just go and buy a pedal off the shelf and be done with it. But in regard to why people would wait, I guess it's the difference between why would you wait for a Morgan car to be made for you when you can go into a Ford dealership and buy Focus straight off the forecourt. If that's not your bag, you can see why you would wait for the Morgan. The sun is just creeping around the hill, so I shall wrap this up and get on with actually playing it. But as I said, for me specifically, it is worth the hype. But again, that comes very much down to the individual playing it and whether you feel it is worth it. So to try and aid you in that decision, I shall now plug it in and play through it for a little bit and tweak some knobs and just generally have some fun with it and set it up how I use it and how I don't use it, just to give you a better flavour of how it sounds. Just for reference, the right hand side of the pedal is the overdrive circuit, on the left hand side is the boost. So obviously the left hand side being a solar boost if you need it, but I'll have a fiddle around using both independently and just generally give you a better idea of how it sounds. So man, I shall see you next week for another episode of Friday Fretworks. As ever, if you enjoyed this, please do subscribe and I shall see you soon.
you.